So the UFC has just cut Jailton Almeida, and this to me is kind of shocking. It is kind of silly, and a conversation that needs to be brought up is how consistent the UFC is. Now, don't get me wrong, he hasn't been the most exciting at times, but he has had a good run in the UFC. And to be honest, the way I see it is because he doesn't fit a certain demographic. He's just cut within 2 losses. He's young enough to where he can bounce back and maybe create a run for himself. He was close to a title at one point, but it's silly. I think that the UFC is super inconsistent, and I'd like to point out a few things. He has 11 fights in the UFC, not counting this Dana White Contender Series, which is how he got in, which was a finish, which was against Dagestani, as you could see, yeah, Nasrudinov. I wonder if he was a favorite, but he might have started his UFC run on a bad note by finishing one of their, favorite kind of fighters. Now, after that, he went on a run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, out of those 6 fights, he had all finishes but Derek Lewis. Now, that's where everything went downhill for him. It was a very boring fight. As you see, he gets, normally it's a rear naked choke, or if he can't get a TKO, that was kind of the bread and butter for him. That win over Lewis is where he kind of leveled up with competition, let's say, and maybe he just wasn't able to get the back, which could be part of the reason why he then struggled to get finishes. But he bounced back, got Ramonov with a finish as well, and Spivak. So, yes, he lost 2 in a row. There is one with Volkov, which was split, and then one with Kuniev, the most recent, which was unanimous. I think they were both split. I would argue that Almeida had bigger moments later in the round versus Kuniev, and I get it. Him pointing at the ground, all this stuff, I was laughing my ass off too, thinking like, dude, this guy, you're the last person to do that. But if you look at his run, we got to be consistent. This fight with Volkov, if he would have been Dagestani himself, that likely would have been a win for him. Kuniev, if he wasn't Russian himself, and let's say he was fucking English, that might have been a win for him as well. The only one that was clear loss for him was Blades. Out of that record of 8-3 in the UFC, 7 were finishes. 7 were finishes. That's a higher finish percentage than, 2 of the GOATs that we look at in the UFC. Now, I want you to guess who this is. We've got, you probably already know, but this is a fighter that started with Leo Kuntz. Damn. All right. Out of the first 11 fights he had in the UFC, we're looking at 10-1 and 6 finishes. 6 finishes in those 10 wins. Since then, of course, there's been better performances, although that last one was such a shame. But we're talking about Islam Makhachev. 28-1, yes, all great stuff. The consistency, because he didn't have the best run at the beginning. He was winning decisions, clear decisions. He didn't lose. That's the thing that kind of kept him in there, I would say. You could argue that. But we also have Khabib, who is, again, the GOAT of the sport in a lot of people's eyes. And we're talking, he had a record, his first 11 fights were all wins, 5 finishes. So less than 50% finishing percentage. And that's just, again, it's just silly stuff. It leaves a sour taste in my mouth, considering that he's 34, he can bounce back. He's already proven to do that before. And he also mentioned he wanted to go back down to light heavyweight, where I think that could also be a big factor to why he's maybe, he's struggling a bit more recently. Again, the higher competition can, of course, make it harder to fight your game and your game plan. So I really don't think that it's fair. Now, another argument, Tagir Bekov has a record of 6-2 in the UFC. And out of those fights, keep in mind, for the first couple years, he was fighting like once a year. That's one thing that a lot of the, fighters from that region tend to do. They'll fight once a year. So yes, Jailton Almeida has had a few losses, but he has been fighting more consistently. When you put yourself out there like that, you are going to be more at risk of losing. And, I think that although he's not the funnest fighter, you got to you got to look at it that way as well. And again, Ulanbekov, 6-2 in the UFC, 4 decisions, 2 finishes, and the other 2 were losses. A fighter like Tai Tuivasa, man, someone that I really like, but you've got to call it what it is. He's 14-9, same division as Almeida, and he's 6 fights in a row where he's been finished or decision. So it's just not consistent. Almeida has not done himself any favors. We also have to look at it in this light where, is it deserving? Does he not deserve to continue his career, at least in the UFC? I'm sure that he'll be signed by some other promotion, but it's just, it's kind of sad. Maybe the fact that he's Brazilian doesn't work in his favor. You've got to be from a certain region, and if you're from that region, you can win decision fights after decision fight, and you'll be fine. But again, we're not even talking about a fighter that hasn't had finishes. We're talking about a fighter that had a better finish percentage than Khabib, than Islam, than Tagir Ulanbekov. I mean, yeah, it's crazy to think of it. But anyways, that's what I think. Hopefully he figures something out. I'm sure he will. Crazy stuff. Anyways, peace.